LMU's Writing Center's webinar on writing an annotated bibliography. We're going to be focusing on the purpose of writing an annotated bibliography, the radar strategy for evaluating sources, and a suggested structure for annotations. So first, we want to consider what the purpose of an annotated bibliography is. So an annotated bibliography is a collection of relevant sources, and it demonstrates that the writer has done extensive secondary research into their topic. Because an annotated bibliography provides summary and evaluation of each source, it's also a good reference for the writer as they get further into the research writing process and begin to formulate an argument and synthesize source information. So I think overall we want to consider annotated bibliographies as a stepping stone in the research writing process. They typically serve as the first assignment of many in which you start doing research on a certain topic, become really knowledgeable about that topic so that you can build your knowledge and contribute new information to the field. So they might be a preliminary assignment before doing a literature review or a larger research paper. And the annotated bibliography often serves as the early stages of that process, as I just mentioned. So remember that not every source you find will or should be discussing your topic in the same exact way. For example, you can seek a variety types of claims made about a topic. So that could be sources that potentially disagree with one another, types of research methods used to study the same things, comparative case studies versus longitudinal studies of a single case, types of populations studied using the same methods, similar studies that have participants from different regions, age groups, other demographics, and various theoretical frameworks informing the studies. And then a second thing to remember is that we want to find sources that when they're taken together will help you construct a complete picture of your topic and a well-reasoned argument. So what does an annotated bibliography look like? An annotated bibliography looks like a reference page, but each citation includes an annotation underneath it. Citations are listed in alphabetical order, as you would typically see in reference pages. Additionally, annotations are typically 1 or 2 paragraphs long, and they should include a summary of the source, as well as an evaluation of the source and possibly a reflection. So we have a little bit of an example of an annotated bibliography here. You can see that they've started with the citation, and then you have the annotation right underneath it. So the radar strategy. The radar strategy is a really useful strategy when you're working on research, especially in writing an annotated bibliography. So the radar actually stands for evaluation of rationale, authority, date, accuracy, and relevance. The radar strategy can help you evaluate the sources that you will find. And we have a handout here for you to see radar questions that will help you dig deeply into your sources. And we will include this handout on our website so that you can have access to later, but I'll give you some more information about the various components of radar. So when we're evaluating rationale, we answer questions such as, why does the author or publisher make this information available? What is the purpose of the information? Are there alternative points of view for this topic? Does the author purposely omit information when creating the argument? So ideally, we're evaluating what the purpose, the rationale, why is this topic being discussed? Authority, evaluating the authority means that you're evaluating the author's credibility for the argument. So some questions that you may consider are, what are the author's credentials? How is the author related to the topic? Is the author affiliated with a reputable institution or organization? And so forth. Now the date evaluates when information was published, And this is important because some information may become obsolete and there could be updated research on that same topic since. So when we're composing an argument, we typically want to use sources that are more recent unless we are discussing the historical overview for that topic. So here we're again evaluating whether the source is up to date and or still relevant. Now the accuracy is important to consider because we're evaluating the accuracy of the source because errors can distort a line of reason. When evaluating for accuracy, we can ask certain questions such as, are there statements you know to be false? Was the article or source reviewed by experts in the fields before being published? Do references or citations support the author's claims? Are the references cited accurately and correctly? So again, we're evaluating how accurate the actual article is. Are there things that we noticed that seem a little off? And finally, the relevance. It's important to consider relevance because we're expected to support our claims only with pertinent information about a topic. So when we're evaluating for relevance, we want to consider questions such as, does the information answer my research question? Does the information meet the requirements for the assignments? And is the information focused on my topic? And an important note that I want to mention is that when we are getting ready to write an evaluation portion of an annotation, we shouldn't try to include information about every one of the radar criteria. Instead, we want to focus on the criteria that are most worth talking about for that particular source. So, for example, if a source was published very recently in response to prior research, it would be a point worth mentioning. Whereas if a research of a source was sponsored by an organization that has an investment in positive findings, that would be a potential issue of bias worth mentioning. So again, we're evaluating a specific source, and we're mentioning the certain criteria within the radar strategy that's more relevant to our annotation. So what should I do if I find problems with a source's credibility or relevance? So you may still want to include that source, but you should be transparent about any issues with the source when you introduce it. It's so much better to be upfront about problems and not try to misinterpret source information than running the risk of the reader discovering a problem with the source and then questioning your credibility because you had something or they misinterpreted it or you misinterpreted it. So again, we just want to be extremely transparent about things, and that's what the annotation serves for. It gives you the opportunity to evaluate and reflect on the information that you've researched. So composing annotations. How should I structure each annotation? We strongly recommend starting with a summary. So what is the source's main point or argument? What are the most important supporting details for that argument? How did the author reach this conclusion? What is the context for and the significance of the argument being made? The summary is the most important part of the annotation and should take up more space than evaluation or reflection. In order to summarize effectively, you have to know the source extremely well. So you want to step away from the article, think of explaining it to a friend in your own words and style and tone. And a little note here, and this should hopefully go without saying, that it would be academically dishonest to borrow from the article's abstract when writing the summary of it. So even though articles can be a really helpful tool when you're searching for sources and selecting sources, you do yourself a favor when you put in time to read and understand the source well enough to summarize it in your own words for the annotated bibliography. And a side note, it's usually really easy to spot when things are directly taken from an abstract because they're not very well written, they're not composed or transitioned, they're just given the information directly that gives the overarching message of the source. So what comes after a summary? So after a summary, we recommend including an evaluation of the source, and this is where we consider the most significant findings from the radar strategy and exercise that we just went over. So does the source seem to be credible and relevant? What details lead you as the reader or evaluator to believe it is or isn't? And if you cite the source, would it improve your own credibility as a researcher and writer? And what do I do after evaluation? This is a good time to reflect on the source. But most importantly, when we're reflecting, we want to consider, how does it fit into our research? Does it relate to other sources? And what does this source help me understand about this topic? So we have an example here of an annotation. Again, this is a supplemental sample. We have up top here, we have the citation, you have the author, everything is written out, and then you have the annotation below where they're focusing on a summary, then evaluating some of the things within the source and the author, and if it's relevant, and you have space to create a reflection at the end. So we want to conclude this by reminding you that the Writing Center is an available resource, and we are able to offer feedback on all types of writing assignments, writing types at any stage in the writing process. So if you have any questions, we can help you with that. If you're working on an annotated bibliography, we can help you with any portion of the assignment that you're working with, whether you're starting or whether you're editing. We're here to support you. In order to make an appointment, you can go into your My LMU to academics, then to writing and course tutoring. You can also access us through the academics.lmu.edu Writing Center website listed below. And again, we just want to remind you that our writing tutors can help with anything, whether it's an annotated bibliography, evaluating the sources, whether you have to, generate a speech for it, a presentation, how to cite properly in a research, all that. So our tutors are there to support you. So thank you for taking the time to join us for this webinar on writing an annotated bibliography. And as I mentioned before, you will find a link to the Radar Strategy handout on our website, and it's going to be listed under the Other Writing Sources tab on our website.